Hello and welcome to the Game Theory Podcast. I'm your host, Sam Vecenie. We are presented by CLNS Media. Today on the show, we've got good friend of the program back again, Mike Pina, to come on and chat about all of the NBA's offseason. There are a billion different storylines to talk about, and leading into what's going to be a wild, I guess, late Saturday, early Sunday morning, I figured I would have Mike on and we would chat a little bit about what's going to happen. Michael writes for Vice Sports over there. He covers the NBA year-round. How's it going, buddy?
Going wonderful, Sam. How are you?
I am all right. It's LA. The draft is over. That's most important in my world because now I get to relax a little bit. At least I got 3 days to relax, and now I have to write about free agency and everything. But that's better than having to deal with all of the smoke screens and bullshit that comes with draft season.
Yeah, I don't even know how you do those top 100 lists. I literally can't fathom ranking players that deep. It's so applause to you, my friend.
It's very maddening. But when you cover college basketball as closely as you do, you kind of develop opinions, I guess, and it goes from there. I mean, it's like you. I'm sure that somewhere in your brain you could come up with a top 70 free agency list. It might take you sitting down and writing it out, but you could come up with them.
Cost me my sanity, but yeah, I could do it.
But yeah, I mean, it is what it is. And then that part's not even the hard part. The evaluation part is kind of I don't want to say it's easy because it's not, but I'm going to get so much shit wrong that it's very clearly not easy. But the harder part is trying to navigate and try and figure out what teams are going to do what. Do you believe that the Clippers like Jerome Robinson? At the end of the day, I did and mocked him 13, and I was lucky they ended up taking him. But, do you believe that the Hawks love Lonnie Walker and they're going to try and move up for him ahead of the Spurs, who they know like him? Who knows?
Being wrong in the evaluation of these guys is why I don't even bother watching college basketball. It's one of the reasons why I don't even bother studying and analyzing these amateurs. I leave it to the professionals.
But it's weirdly, it's so important though too, because it's the easiest way to get to get elite level talent.
Yeah, for sure, it's critical. I agree, but I just don't trust myself. So I'll let others form the opinions, make the videos, give me the clips, and I'll absorb it that way.
Love it. We're going to talk again, like I said at the top here, about NBA free agency. This episode is sponsored by Lightstreams. We'll give a quick little shout out to them midway through the show. But if we're going to start with NBA off-season notes and free agency and everything like that, I feel like we have to start with Kawhi Leonard, if only because it seems like he has potential to be the first domino if the Spurs decide to make the move. Because, Adrian Wojnarowski, Ramona Shelburne, and Brian Windhorst earlier today had a story that said, the pressure is mounting for the Lakers to trade for Kawhi Leonard. At the end of the day, it takes two teams to consummate a trade, so I don't really know what to think there. But it's very clear that Kawhi, this is a domino that has to happen at some point here, and we have to get resolution in one way or another before free agency, at least from the Lakers' perspective.
Yeah, I just read that story. It's pretty interesting. Relating it back to what Magic Johnson said yesterday about how he would resign if after 2 years he doesn't get an all-star caliber max contract free agent to go to LA. After reading that piece, if he does not get one of Kawhi, LeBron, or Paul George this summer, I mean, he should just quit. I don't know how you walk away from the negotiating table without any one of those guys. It seems like candy right now.
Yeah, I mean, he said that maybe they don't end up with one of those guys, and they end up going down the road of having this flexibility next summer to try and woo a free agent again when Kawhi is actually a free agent. And the 2019 free agency class actually does look really strong with Jimmy Butler and Kyrie Irving and I guess theoretically Chris Middleton will be a free agent. Like there are a lot of guys out there that they could chase. I would be skeptical on Middleton going anywhere, but like at the end of the day here, it's a really, really interesting saga leading into free agency on July 1st because LeBron wants to make an early decision. This is something that's been out there, for the last week or so, that he doesn't want this to drag on, which praise be to LeBron. The king stays the king. And the other thing here is that I don't know what Paul George is thinking. Like it seemed like it was a done deal for him to go to Los Angeles early on, last year, and he would just be a done deal. 1201, he was going to go to LA. They were going to max him, and it would be fine. It doesn't seem like that's the deal anymore either. It seems like he's seriously considering Oklahoma City. So it seems like it's going to be an all or nothing thing for the Lakers, which is kind of scary.
I feel like at the end of the day with Paul George, right now he's just trying to let the Oklahoma City Thunder down easy. He's being very polite. He doesn't want to ruffle any feathers. I still think he's going to go to the Los Angeles Lakers. That was the tea leaves for the past longer than 18 months back, I would say. So it would surprise me if he didn't go to LA. And then, LeBron is a little bit more unpredictable. Kawhi's obviously still under contract, and the Spurs, if I were them, I would not, bend to what the Lakers want. And I think you can get better offers even with the idea of a theoretical rental situation. If I was the Philadelphia 76ers or even the Boston Celtics, I know that I can offer a more attractive package than the Lakers. And then there's also, there are mystery teams out there that could get involved. So,
I guess that's my question to you then. Because if you're Philadelphia or you're Boston and you don't get the chance to talk to Kawhi beforehand, which I would imagine San Antonio would facilitate that just to kind of facilitate the best possible offer. But, let's say you are in a situation where you only believe you're getting 1 year of Kawhi Leonard. Do your offers still top what the Lakers can offer?
If you're Boston, this all depends on what San Antonio wants, right? So if Greg Popovich wants an all-star caliber player back or another young building block that he can compete with right now, then sure. The Celtics have that they can send back with either Hayward or Kyrie Irving, theoretically.
The Hayward offer is, I think, my favorite random one because you can just offer Gordon Hayward, and I believe it's Marcus Morris and Terry Rozier, and you can get back Kawhi, and you can take on Pau Gasol and Patty Mills, and I guess you can offer them a first round pick from your cache of first round picks. They get off of Gasol and Mills. Mills can be useful for the Celtics in some way, especially if Rozier goes. Powell, we'll see. He'd actually be pretty interesting in Brad Stevens' offense, but that's, it's still Powell at this stage, and he's still very, very old. But you get Hayward, you get a legit all-star for Kawhi Leonard, who's signed for at least 2 more years, potentially 3, given the fact that I think it's going to be pretty hard for him to give up $34.2 million in that 4th year in that option. So that is at least an interesting offer to me. Hayward, Morris, Rozier, and a first for Kawhi, Powell, and Patty Mills.
Yeah, that's nice. And then if you're the Sixers, the hypothetical that I've been pretty interested in, and if I was the Spurs, I would basically not back down from, would be I want Ben Simmons for Kawhi. And
There's
then if you're the
no
Sixers,
chance.
I know it's very unlikely, but but I'm not taking the poo-poo platter. A Markelle Fultz based deal. I'm not a believer in Fultz. Fultz, Saric, Zaire Smith, the 2021 Heat pick, that's not very. I think the Lakers could do better than that. So
that's a good question.
It's a toss up, but if I were
Ingram and Kuzma probably tops that.
Yes, I agree with that. And, also, if you're going back to the Celtics really quick, if they want to kind of start over and rebuild, the Celtics obviously have the best, the Kings pick is obviously really valuable. The Grizzlies pick is very valuable, but, they also have Jaylen Brown, who is a potential future All-Star, and I'm personally pretty high on him. If he were kind of a go-to guy, that would be really interesting as a building block that they could build their roster around. So I think there's a lot of really interesting offers you could get for Kawhi.
Well, here's a good question. I mean, would you trade Jaylen Brown for Kawhi Leonard if you thought you only had 1 year of him?
If I thought I only had 1 year of him?
Yeah.
No.
I agree with you.
Even though I think that team definitely goes to the finals, assuming that Kawhi would be healthy. And, I don't want to say they're guaranteed to, win because the Warriors are still out there. But that team, if they were able to retain Marcus Smart and just about everybody,
they match up well with Golden State.
That would be a very interesting. I mean, that offense would be explosive, very versatile on the other end. That would be a very, 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 very good team for at least 1 year. And then that kind of goes back to why I'm so perplexed by Magic Johnson and how he could screw up. I understand not trading assets for Paul George last summer. No, if you get the tea leaves that he's going to sign with you, but if Paul George in fact does not sign with you, then you basically, you let him go to a good situation where he may be interested in spending the rest of his career or the prime of his career, and so you lose out on that. So if you're the Lakers, if Kawhi Leonard were to go to the Celtics and win a championship or go to the finals, why would he leave and go to the Lakers? That doesn't really make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, the Magic Johnson of all of this is fascinating, especially given his statement yesterday saying I will resign in 2 years if we don't sign any of these all-star free agents. I mean, A, kind of feels like he feels very confident about this. And B, we just don't have a track record on what to expect from Magic Johnson in a situation like this. And if he can be successful in closing a deal like this. He obviously is a successful businessman. He has an incredibly successful playing career. This is a different beast, trying to convince, multiple different players on multiple different fronts in this scenario. Hey, you're going to come here. We're going to optimize you. We're going to make sure that we get the best out of your abilities. I don't know what to think of Magic's ability to do that yet, just because we don't know if he can do this. This is a different job than anything he's ever held before.
Also, that whole thing that he said, what are you thinking if you hear that, if you are Ingram or Lonzo or Kuzma or any of the young guys on that team? It's basically what am I, garbage? You're going to resign in 2 years? I'm supposed to be a budding or potential all-star here. That's and so I he's taking shots at his own roster indirectly, and I don't understand the upside in making a statement like that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. You look at what Brandon Ingram, the leaps he took this year, they were very good. He looks he is on track to be an all-star, given how young he is at this stage. He's still just 20 years old. He's younger than Josh Jackson. He's younger than rookies in this class for sure. And I wouldn't want to give him up. I think that you can make a case Brandon Ingram, other than Jaylen Brown, is the best asset that the Spurs will get back in any deal, right?
Yeah, I'm a fan of his game. And, he played quite a bit out of position last year too. Which,
yep.
He was playing the point at times, and that's really interesting for his long-term growth. That experience. I'm a big fan of his game once his body fills out a little bit more than it has. Once he kind of gets more comfortable shooting threes. He shot a high percentage, but very low volume.
Yep.
From beyond the arc. I'm a big fan of his game too, for sure. I think that Jaylen physically might be a little bit more of an imposing presence on the other end, and I'm not sure who's better long term as a facilitator. So I'll side with Jaylen just because he's already been to the playoffs and shown that he can produce there.
Yep.
But I like Ingram a lot.
Yeah, being the second best asset that a team can acquire behind Jaylen Brown, who is, I ran through all of the trade assets in the league a few days ago, and I couldn't get to 30 before saying Jaylen. Just given team control, given everything that goes into that rating, Jaylen is really high up there. He's a very, very strong asset, and Brandon Ingram's also very, very good. I mean, where do we think this ends? Do we think that Kawhi ends up in Los Angeles? Because it feels like it has to happen before July 1st. Otherwise, there's just no point in it.
I feel like I'm definitely in the minority here, but I kind of think that they're going to offer him the Supermax and he's going to take it, and he's going to stay in San Antonio. That's kind of, I know that seems like it's impossible at this point. I think there was a report a couple weeks back that this was not about money. I do not believe that for 2 seconds. I think that the Spurs have a historical track record of wanting their stars and their franchise players to embody sacrifice, and this is the age of sacrifice, both financially and touches, minutes, that sort of thing, even for the best players in the world. But I think that it's kind of just like the Spurs are not even willing to offer this man as much money as he's worth, win healthy, and I think that bothers him more than anything else. And if they were to put that on the table, I think he would sign it.
I mean, do we know for sure that they won't put it on the table yet?
I read somewhere that they would. I think it was a Woj report from a couple weeks back where they wanted to see and make sure that he could behave like a franchise player would.
It's absurd.
Before they, based on, things were obviously very topsy-turvy last season, and to come out and just give it to him right away, I think would be an interesting move. Another organization might not care and do it, but I think the Spurs do things their own way, and they've had a lot of success behaving the way that they do, and I don't think they're going to change right now.
Yeah, I mean, just give the dude his money. I feel like this feels like a not difficult decision to me, I guess. But Kawhi Leonard was one of the 5 best players in the league, both in 2016 and in 2017. If there's anyone worth a max level contract, it is a 26-year-old dude who is one of the 5 best players in the league.
I think I predicted he would win the MVP 2 years in a row, and I think he finished second, if I'm not. I might be mistaken. He finished second either last year or the year before. He is so good. I think a lot of people have short-term memory. He is, he is the perfect piece for where the league is going. I'm all about him. Yeah. All about him.
No, he is absolutely incredible. I think he's going somewhere. I don't think the Spurs are going to keep him. I think that what ends up happening is he goes to LA. I think that they do give up Ingram. I think they do give up Kuzma. And the kind of side of this is that Lonzo Ball gets offshooted for a first-round pick somewhere that ends up being rerouted to San Antonio.
That would be interesting.
Yeah.
So you trade for Kawhi, and in this scenario, LeBron signs there, I assume.
Yes.
And then, so Deng is gone, right?
Yeah, you use Deng as the salary filler.
Okay, so is there room? There's room for Paul George there still, or
there is, I believe. If you get rid of Deng, there is.
So basically, this roster is clean except maybe Hart. Is that the only player?
Might have to give up Hart too, but if you're saying, hey, we're giving you Luol Deng, there has to be an offset there. You have to give them something else to take on Luol Deng. It almost has to be Kawhi for Ingram, Kuzma, and Hart, plus the Deng deal, plus a first round pick, right?
Well, we know that they're trying to acquire first right now, and the best way to do that is to take on bad salary. So I think that I don't know how you get all 3 of those guys. Unless... Well, I
think you use Lonzo to get the first-round pick. You offshoot Lonzo somewhere else. Because someone will give up a first-rounder for Lonzo.
Maybe. That's possible. In the Woj report today, it said their strategy was to take on a toxic salary and to absorb, or to get that first. But I guess you could, it could get interesting if Paul George opts in and then there's a trade situation and you don't have to use your cap space. But
that's true.
This is just so complicated, and I'm not even sure how this all happens. It's making my head spin.
Well, you'd have a clean roster at the end of the day. You'd hopefully have those 3 guys. And then additionally, I do think that there is a way to keep Julius Randle in this scenario, because Julius Randle would be kind of a perfect small ball 5 who can switch everything kind of dude for these guys,
Yeah, he's got a pretty hefty. What's his cap hold? 12. I'm looking at it now. 12.4 million.
That. Yeah,
that's going to be tricky. His free agency. I don't know when we're going to talk about potential restricted and unrestricted free agents, but his free agency will be very interesting.
Well, let's move there. I guess we'll move into unrestricted free agency first.
Okay.
Because Chris Paul, we think, is just going to Houston, right?
Yes.
We think Kevin Durant is going to Golden State.
I think we know that.
Yes, he has said it multiple times. Like, we feel good about him not, like, just backing out of this because Bob Myers made jokes.
Yes.
Who is the next guy that you're looking at as the most interesting player? It doesn't have to be the best player because I think the best player is pretty clearly DeMarcus Cousins. But, like, who is the guy you're most interested in watching?
Well, besides Paul George.
Well, we talked about Paul George and
we
LeBron
talked about,
pretty
okay.
heavily.
I mean, well, first of all, are we sure that DeMarcus Cousins is that? I know, like, he is someone I would stay very, very far away from if I was another GM. And if I was the New Orleans Pelicans, I would just want absolutely no part of. But neither here nor there. To answer your question, there's a few interesting guys on this market. I wrote a piece that was just kind of, looking out at how it's a very top heavy class and there's not a lot of money to go around. So it's just, I think a lot of players will be taking either short-term deals to get back out on the market in 2019, or they're going to sign for like the mid-level and not be in a very exciting situation. Before we started recording, you said that Derek Favors was someone who interests you.
Yeah.
I agree with that. And I personally would really love to see him in a situation where he can start at the 5, which I think is his position in today's league.
Yep.
Beside Rudy Gobert, they've had a lot of success during the regular season, particularly on the defensive end when those two share the floor. But as we saw in the second round against the Rockets, you can't play two bigs who are uncomfortable in the perimeter at the same time if you want to beat the best teams in the league, which I think Utah has aspirations to do. So if I'm Favors, I think Dallas is just such a perfect position for him.
Yep.
He could be at the 5. He's 3 years younger than DeAndre Jordan, who is the center who is always linked to Dallas, and I just don't really understand that given where they're at in their timeline. I think Favors is, when healthy, he just is such a useful big on both ends. He can pass a little bit. He can shoot a little bit. He's really good in transition. He's got a little bit of a nifty post game. He's physical. He rebounds. He protects the rim. He's just I've always loved Derek Favors' game, and I want to see him go to a spot where he can start and where he can flourish. And I think Dallas is that place.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He's just a really, really smart player, which is so interesting that he's developed into that, because if you remember when he came into the league, he was like the uber athletic, 6'10", 7'3" wingspan, freaky dude who, is going to protect the rim and still needs to learn all of the little, the little intricacies of the game, I guess is the way to put it. But he's kind of developed all of those things, and it's just unfortunate that the legs kind of gave out on him a little bit. He's still fine and he's healthy, and hopefully he's not the athlete he was before, to be sure, but hopefully he can play much like he did this year, 77 to 80 games, even 70 to 82 games. I think would be great for a team that acquires him. And you mentioned it, he's a really, really underrated rim protector. He's an efficient scorer inside. He had a 59% true shooting percentage this year, and he does it while being able to step away and knock down shots occasionally, which is a very interesting skill now. He shot 63 threes this past year. A lot of them, those like little short corner threes. If he can become more than a 22% three-point shooter, which given his mechanics, I think is possible as he gets into age 28, 29. There's a lot of real intrigue there, and I agree with you that I think Dallas makes the absolute most sense for him. If they get him, you're talking about a situation with Dennis Smith, Luka Doncic, Harrison Barnes, him. I mean, Wes Matthews probably still ends up being on that roster. That's probably not a playoff team, but that is a team that is a lot improved in a really, really difficult Western Conference and will be miserable for teams to play.
No, and Dallas is trying to win. You don't give up a future first.
even if it's top 5 protected, to try to tank the next season. It's clear that obviously a little bit of that was that they really loved Doncic and thought that was a really rare opportunity to go up and get a franchise guy. But this team wants to win, and I think Favors is he's young enough to kind of grow with those guys on a 3 or 4 year contract. And
yep.
I know from just talking to a few people over the past couple of days who know Favors, he wants winning now. Winning is a big part of his free agency decision, which is why, going back to Utah is a possibility. I'm not reporting this, but I know that from talking to a few people that he's not, he does not want to take the mid-level, although starting at the 5 for a team like, say, the Washington Wizards would be something that would interest him. They just traded Marcin Gortat, so they're looking for a big like Favors. So I think there aren't a lot of destinations for him. And if Dallas doesn't see what we see in him and they go after DJ or they go after DeMarcus Cousins, it's likely that he returns back to Utah. And that, to me personally, no one cares what I think, but I would be a little disappointed with that.
The interesting move for me is if I was Utah, I would probably be willing to offer him huge money on a 1-year deal. Just because they have the ability to, it's obviously Utah, and Utah isn't necessarily a massive haven for a lot of free agents, but you look around, they actually do have the ability to clear off a lot of cap space next summer when Alec Burks' money comes off, Ricky Rubio's money comes off, and then potentially if they were to sign Derek Favors to an $18 million a year 1-year deal, that money could come off as well. And they, with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert and Joe Ingles is your centerpieces there. That's actually a pretty interesting situation for free agents, I think.
Yeah, you saw Donovan Mitchell kind of pitching Paul George earlier this summer for his services next year. I just can't, I'm pretty open-minded when it comes to this stuff. I just can't see any big impact player signing in Utah.
Yeah. I think that's fair.
Yeah, for sure. And there's going to be a lot of teams that have cap. You look around at just cap sheets throughout the league and more attractive destinations. A lot of people are going to have money to spend. A lot of these crummy contracts are coming off the books next summer and the year after that. And so, it's not really anything special. Playing with Mitchell, if he continues to, look like a perennial all-NBA player over the next couple of years, then maybe guys will want to play with him.
Yeah.
But I think that, I think Gobert, I'm just not a humongous fan of his, and I think that contract is, it's not an albatross, but I think he's a little bit overpaid for what he is and where the league is going and what it values. So I'm a little down on their future. I respect the Utah Jazz as much as any team, but in terms of title contention, which I think that, they want to do, it's a tricky situation for them to get there.
Gobert is 3 years, $75 million. That's not that bad for him.
No, okay, so I don't know. He's making 24 next year, 25 the year after. How is he getting better? Has he peaked? I personally think he has. I don't know. Bigs who can't score on their own, who can't really dribble that well, who aren't great passers, who don't space, who aren't,
But he does space the floor a little bit, though, because of the gravity his role threat has. Because he's so big that he can just legitimately jump over everyone. That has value.
Yeah, no, I see that. But, as more teams have, and more, bigs that are coming into the league now seem to be, switchier, and teams are playing lineups where the primary ball handler is 6'6", 6'7". You look at the lineups that the Boston Celtics are going to play over the next season. And that's gonna. You could just switch all that, and then you take away the lob threat, and where are you? So it's I need more skill out of my 5 than Rudy Gobert provides. Although I do respect the fact that he's one of the more imposing defenders in the league.
Mike, I don't know if you need loan consolidation, but I have an easy way for you to save some money. You can lower your interest rate on your credit card debt with a credit card consolidation loan from Lightstream. Lightstream rewards customers who have good credit with a great interest rate and no fees. Get a credit card consolidation loan from 5.89% APR with autopay. Loans from $5,000 to $100,000. You can choose your funding date as soon as today. This is a really great product, guys. I can absolutely attest to Lightstream being fantastic. My listeners get an additional interest rate discount on top of Lightstream's already low rates. The only way to get this discount is to go to lightstream.com/theory. That's lightstream.com/theory, THEORY. This is subject to credit approval. The rate includes a 0.5% auto pay discount. Terms and conditions apply, and offers are subject to change without notice. Visit lightstream.com for more information. Mike, the other guy that I want to talk about real quick is Will Barton. I think he might be the most underrated free agent in this class. I have him as a top 10 unrestricted free agent right now. He's a guy that can give you 15 points, 4 rebounds, 4 assists a night. Has been one of the best bench players in the league. Later in the year, transitioned to a starter for Denver. I am a fan of what he's going to provide for someone, and just given their financial situation, I would bet that he probably ends up elsewhere.
Yeah, I mean, the one team that, has been linked to him is the Indiana Pacers, and I could see them splurging. I would not necessarily splurge, but I could see them, paying big money for Will Barton and kind of replacing what Lance Stevenson has provided for them, off the bench as a reliable scorer and someone who can kind of make plays for others and get where they want. And, he's a big shot maker, which is very nice. When the shot clock is dwindling down, he's someone who isn't afraid to take and make really difficult shots.
Yep.
So I like his game. I think he's a little too selfish for me. And, he played a lot of point last year, and those lineups were intriguing. But maybe the fit just wasn't the greatest. But I don't know. I do think that, looking at the I don't know if he would crack my top 10 of unrestricted free agents. He is definitely one of the more intriguing players available for sure. And I think, he might be better off on I could see him going to a bad team, but I don't think any of those teams have cap space or willingness to pay him. But yeah, he's an intriguing player for sure.
Yeah, I mean, the thing with him is that you look at what his on-off metrics are, you look at kind of what his actual impact on the game is. I mean, you can make a case that he puts up pretty empty numbers. He was, I think, a -1 offensively this year when he was on the floor for Denver, and he played, again, he started 40 games, so he played a pretty good amount of minutes with Nikola Jokic. Was -4 offensively the year before, but he does play a lot of bench minutes too, and you would expect that those lineups would have worse success when Nikola Jokic is off of the floor. So he's not a guy that I think is going to necessarily drive your play for starters, but he is a player that if you want someone who can lead a bench unit and, like you said, knock down big shots, that's valuable, and that still has a place in the league, I think.
Yeah, It does. He's just a little too wily for me.
I love that.
Yeah, and I love watching him. If he played for my favorite team, I think that my opinion would be a little bit more up and down.
Yeah.
Someone who I think is really interesting and is perpetually underrated is Trevor Ariza. Who, that's a situation where...
I have him 10th for what it's worth on my top 10. So I am right with you.
Okay, yeah, he's, his numbers don't pop off the page primarily because he fits a very specific role in Houston, and, a guy who just took a ton of threes, a lot of them wide open. He would pump and go, finish at the rim, pretty good at that. He could guard multiple positions, really smart defender. a catalyst in their switch everything scheme that had so much success last year. But he's exactly the type of player that everybody wants, and I don't know if things work out for Houston, where they can land another all-star talent in a situation where either LeBron or Paul George opts in. I don't know how you keep Trevor, and then if he's on the market, I don't know how much he gets, and it'll be really interesting to see given his age and the wear and tear on his body.
Yeah, no, I think that I agree with you on all fronts. He's a guy that I think will make a lot of sense for a team that's trying to contend. I would have to imagine he goes back to Houston just because they can offer him the most money. Like, I don't know that any other team is going to offer him, at least a team that's contending, is going to offer him more than the mid-level. And Houston can go to like $10 million.
Well, the thing is, if you're Houston, they're going to re-sign Paul, most likely. And I would be surprised if that was not a max deal. Maybe it isn't, and he wants years, and they cut down the total number, and they figure something out because they're really smart. But that's going to be a lot of money. And then I don't see them letting Capella go for just about any reason whatsoever, even if someone offers gives him a max offer sheet and he signs it. So that tax bill is going to be astronomical. You're right that they have his bird rights, they could pay more than anyone else. But I thought it was really interesting when the report came out a little while ago about, him kind of maybe he didn't do this, but pseudo-threatening to sign with the Warriors. And I don't believe that he would take a pay cut to go there. But I thought that was just I read that as kind of like a leverage point of, hey, like a signal to Houston, like, you better not forget about me because I'm very important. And I know you want to take care of all your other free agents and you want to add another all-star, but like, I'm still here and I'm not afraid to leave. So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it absolutely was a leverage point. And I hope that the Rockets just decide to pay him. Like, that makes the most sense to me. The other guy that's interesting to me, though, is Thaddeus Young. Very, very similar to Trevor Ariza in some respects in the way that he can be a switchable defender who was very, very useful against LeBron James and against Kevin Love in the Pacers' first-round 7-game series against the Cavaliers. And, not necessarily the shooter Trevor Ariza is, but can do some other offensive things that make him probably just as valuable as Ariza is offensively. Another guy that it seems like he's going to decline his option if he hasn't already, and I will be fascinated to see what he gets on the open market.
What is he thinking? I don't know why he would. That report shocked me, and I know it's not official yet. That really surprises me.
Because it's like $13 million?
Yeah, 13.7, I believe.
So my theory on this, and I have not spoken to him or his agents or anything, but my theory on this is he thinks this is his last big chance at a contract, and he wants to get 4 years. Even if it's like the mid-level and he gets 4 years, $34 million, that still might be more valuable to him than, $113.
Thaddeus Young is intriguing. All the things that you said are very true. His versatile defense, he's beefier than Ariza, so he can guard bigger guys down low. He's just not consistently efficient enough for me, particularly from behind the three-point line. He's not a good free throw shooter. And so he was very important for Indiana last year, a team that has, frustratingly played two bigs over the past few seasons before they made the Paul George trade, and kind of slotting him in at the 4, I thought was really necessary and good for their team. And if you look at his on-off numbers in the fourth quarter, they were humongous. They were such a good team with him on the floor in the fourth, and they died when he was off the court. So he's important to them and their success last year. But I don't know. I mean, that's another guy who I don't really know necessarily what I'm getting on the offensive end with him. I think he's smart and he's fluid in transition, but in the half court in a playoff series, I just don't know how many minutes he would play on my team.
Well, I feel like you could play him a lot of minutes, but the more intriguing role for him as he continues to age and mature is like small ball 5, isn't it? Like you could see him in like downsized lineups like Golden State plays with David West. He's strong enough to be able to do that, I would think.
Yeah, I don't know exactly what his wingspan is. What is he, like? I know he's like 6'8".
Yeah, maybe, and he has like a 7'2" wingspan, something like that.
Okay, yeah, that would be very interesting. Obviously, you would need serious wing depth and shooting to pull something like that off. But yeah, no, that is that would be a very effective role for him, I think, going forward.
It's actually 7 foot is his wingspan. I should retract my 7'2".
Sam, that changes everything.
I know those 2 inches are wild, but no, I mean your goal there is to, if you're playing him at the 5, your goal is to cut down on penetration more than to protect the rim. I mean, it'd be like a Julius Randle situation with how the Lakers are big fans of playing Randle at the 5. It's very useful for their defense whenever he does that. Let's talk about some restricted free agents before I let you go. You mentioned Marcus Smart earlier. You mentioned Julius Randle earlier as well as 2 guys that are interesting. Both of those guys I don't really know what to do with necessarily. I think that they are both threats to leave because I can see another NBA team valuing them more than their incumbent team. The Celtics obviously have Terry Rozier, have a lot of wing depth that they can, overcome the loss of Marcus Smart if a team was to offer him like 4 years, $52 million or something. Julius Randle, the team just needs to maintain flexibility and might just decide to let him go if he ends up signing something substantial. So, what are your thoughts on both of those guys?
Well, Marcus Smart, I'll start there. He's like one of my favorite players of all time.
Marcus Smart is your son. He is just
exactly.
Beautiful.
He is flawless in every conceivable way. I think his market is going to be really interesting. If I were the Celtics, there is a path to staying under the tax and giving him a 4 for $40 deal, I believe, although it gets complicated with retaining Aaron Baines. I just think he's such an identity piece and so integral to what they are and the success that they've had since they brought him in and drafted him. I love everything intangible about his game, and I love players who cannot be quantified on a spreadsheet, and he's exactly that. The shooting is definitely not. I mean, I will say that he played with a pretty bad thumb injury throughout the playoffs, so I think his shooting numbers were bad.
We're not going to defend Marcus Smart shooting, are we?
No, we're not going to. But it was even worse than it normally is. Particularly he couldn't post up as he normally would. And he's not a great finisher around the basket, but he's better than I think he showed in the playoffs. That said, he impacted games positively because he's so ridiculously strong and compact and smart and such a great communicator, so athletic. I mean, on his first play back after like 3 weeks off, it was the first round against the Bucks. I think it was Game 5 in the Garden, and he blocked Giannis at the rim on a lob.
He's spectacular.
That's just incredible. And he had to go up with his left. He twisted his body in the air, and he contested it with his left hand because his shooting hand had the brace on it, and he didn't want to injure it in his first play back. So, I mean, he's just a freak. He does whatever it takes. Looking out at his market, there's just not a lot of...
You mentioned Will Barton for Indiana, and that's something that's been reported. Marcus Smart is the guy that I would go after if I was Indiana. I would prioritize him pretty strongly.
Yeah, I was just about to... Yeah, that's a team that I think, again, if you want your identity to be what Marcus Smart is, which I think that would really fit the Indiana Pacers with Victor Oladipo leading the league in steals last season, another guy who's super physical at his position. I mean, those two in your backcourt, that is a nightmare. I could not even imagine playing against those two.
And Aaron Holiday is super pesky at the point of attack, too, as their first-round pick. They would be very frustrating to play against.
Yeah, so if Miles Turner comes around and kind of becomes what people thought he would be 2 years ago, then that's a very scary team. I don't know how much money you want to pay Marcus and how many years you want to give him. That's where it gets just a little dicey. He does get hurt
Yeah,
quite a bit because of just the way he plays. Yeah.
If I was them, I would say like 450 even. Like, I understand that that's an overpay for a guy who's never posted a true shooting percentage over 50%, but like, I don't care. That's exactly the identity. Like, that's what I want to build. I
honestly think the Celtics would match that.
Do you?
I really do. What's that, like 12 and a half a year?
Yeah.
I think. He's just so integral, and everybody loves him. His teammates, all the coaches, the front office, the fans. It's just like he's so endearing, and so I think they would match that, which means I think you really need to overpay. And, when I look around at some other possible destinations and teams that there just aren't a lot of teams that have cap space, which is why, the scenario where he plays for his qualifying offer looms very large as a realistic possibility. I mean, I'm looking around and like, I don't know, like the Phoenix
Chicago, you can't just have him play with Chris Dunn.
No, you can't have those two guys. Yeah, exactly. It's just like Victor Oladipo works because he's one of the better
pull-up shooters.
Pull up, exactly. Yeah. So I'm looking at the Phoenix Suns and their cap sheet right now, and they don't have the space. They would have to make some trades and clear some salary. That would be pretty interesting, I think.
Well, I mean, they do have the space to do this. All you'd have to do is renounce the cap hold to Elfrid Payton and Alex Len, and you could give him like $15 million a year.
Yeah, that's but then what do you? I mean, that's just a really risky play if you're Phoenix.
Like, you would be playing both him and Josh Jackson on the floor at the same time.
Exactly. And I know, what are your thoughts on Jackson progressing as like a legitimate outside shooter?
He's knocked down shots throughout the course of his career. Like, I think that's at least worth noting, but I'd be surprised if he's ever anything more than like a 33% 3-point shooter. I mean, like he might get to the point where he is like Draymond Greenish out there. Teams might still let him loose and like let him go, but he might hurt you sometimes.
That would not work with Marcus.
No, it wouldn't.
I don't think.
No, I agree. If they are building around Josh Jackson, which it seems like they are, although the Mikal Bridges pick gives them a little bit of license to be able to kind of maneuver around with him a little bit, maybe use him as a piece going forward in a trade. I'm a big Jackson fan. What I saw late in the year, especially like from, I would say, maybe late January, early February onward, like he actually got really good. It's just there are holes there, and the holes don't fit with Marcus Smart.
Yeah. So besides that, I mean, I guess we should talk about Julius Randle now.
I want a Knicks Julius Randle situation.
Oh my God. I mean, with Randle, that's someone whose game I'm not ready to admit I was wrong in my criticism, even though last year he basically scored every time I watched the Lakers last year and Randle had the ball at like the elbow facing up or like elbow extended, he would get to the rim and score. And I was like, okay, well, I guess that's the point of the game. So
he does.
Like, why do you even need a jumper? Exactly. So I don't know if he's going to be a big stats, no wins player. When he doesn't have the ball, he's a pretty good offensive rebounder and an intriguing role man, but with a pretty good vision that it could get better when he becomes a more willing passer. But just his shot is just so awful that that really kind of deters him when he's off the ball from being effective. And defensively, he's, as a switch man who can engage, I think he's, that's kind of his thumbs up role.
Yep.
As a rim protector, that's a totally different story. I don't think his arms are long enough. I don't think he's, as athletic and smart enough, really, to be honest, to be an effective rim protector consistently. But I think at the right spot, he could be really interesting if, he plays on a team that's really committed to switching just about everything.
Yeah, he's super quick laterally, and you see it in the first step whenever he's on that elbow extended, getting to the rim, and you see it whenever he's switching defensively. Not super explosive vertically, though. And you see that when he's trying to protect the rim. You saw it early in his career when he would occasionally struggle to finish around the rim. But he's figured out ways around that. I mean, Julius Randle averaged 16 points and 8 rebounds a game this year with like 3 assists a game in 27 minutes a night. He's like Enes Kanter, except can actually like play defense in a competent system.
So where are we? I mean, I don't see him going back to LA because, again, I think they're going to have to renounce his cap hold, and I think there will be better offers out there for him. I'm not sure off the top of my head what those are. I mean, Dallas might be interesting if they don't do favors.
They make sense.
But I don't know. I mean, you said the Knicks earlier. I don't think that they don't have the cap space, I don't believe, to.
It would depend on Kanter opting out, which
I don't think that's going to happen.
Horrible decision for his career, but he's been vocal about threatening it.
Yeah, I don't see that. I don't see that happening.
I mean, it gets hard. You really have to search because, like, would San Antonio renounce Rudy Gay and Tony Parker and like Joffrey Laverne and Bryn Forbes and these guys and decide to pay Julius Randle like $13 million a year?
He does not seem like a Spurs player to me at all.
I agree, but like that's a team that has space.
Yeah, I mean, well, Rudy Gay is opting out, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, you'd still technically have to renounce that. I don't see them getting rid of Tony Parker to get Julius Randle. But I mean, crazier things have happened.
Yeah, I mean, like the teams just like aren't really there for his marketplace to develop. Like, is Washington in a sign and trade? Like, I don't know who you sign and trade to LA though in that scenario.
I don't know. And I don't even know if Washington is. I mean, they might be over the tax. I don't even know.
They're close already.
Yeah, so that's tricky. It actually is an interesting team that just popped into my head that may, they have a track record of going after restricted guys.
Charlotte?
And kind of making big... No, that Charlotte's interesting, but they're just hopeless and the saddest team in the league, and I would never... If I was an agent, I would not advise my client to go there for any reason whatsoever. But the team I'm thinking about is the Brooklyn Nets, and I think that they're interesting. We don't know exactly how much cap space they will have until we find out what exactly the buyout agreement is with Dwight Howard. But that is a player who, if they're trying to just bring in talented pieces, and obviously they would not be. I don't think they would be very interested in paying him beyond a 1-year deal, and kind of maybe a 1-and-1 with a team option in the second year. But there's a lot of leaps and bounds and things that just make all of my hypotheticals crumble as I speak them out loud.
Right. It gets really hard to find a spot for him.
Yeah. And,
like Chicago would have been an interesting one before they drafted Wendell Carter.
Mm-hmm. He's just such a tough fit because you need so many things around him to be successful.
Also, while we're on the topic of Chicago, can we talk about what I think might have been the worst free agency contract of like the last 4 years?
Felicia?
Yes.
Yeah, not great.
Like what were they gave him $432 on like the second day of free agency
to be their like fourth string center.
Yeah.
That was
like
not great.
I guess it's theoretically not as harmful as like the Mozgov deal or the Deng deal, but it's probably more nonsensical.
I liked him before, and thought he was a player, and then he just kind of disintegrated once he got paid. And that one is really, really tricky. And then you draft Carter, you have Markkanen. That's kind of your front court for the future.
Bobby Portis is there still too.
Bobby Portis is still there. He can play some 4 and some 5. So I mean, Noah Vonleh is someone who they might be interested in keeping around. I don't know about that, but
Yeah.
Yeah, I that's a really just a dumb signing. And it looks worse every day.
I can't find a spot for Randle. The other interesting free agent, though, the other two interesting ones. I mean, we can skip Aaron Gordon and Clint Capella. Aaron Gordon's interesting because
you think they match no matter what.
I don't know if they match a max, but I think that they should be matching most everything, right?
Orlando, yeah.
Yeah, to me, I would rather have him than Clint Capella, even though Capella was better this year.
Capella was in a situation where it was just perfect.
Right.
Absolutely every single way. And,
right.
He made credit to him for making the necessary strides to hit his ceiling in that role. But, it's like not even close to what Aaron Gordon is dealing with without a point guard in Orlando.
Right. Like if I'm a team that is trying to go out and sign another free agent, I sincerely doubt that I can put Capella in as positive a situation as what he was in.
You cannot.
Yeah. Just straight up can't. So I'd probably rather have Aaron Gordon, but I understand that Clint Capella in his situation is more valuable than Aaron Gordon. The two guys I wanted to talk about were Dante Exum and Jusuf Nurkic. The Trailblazers have thrown Nurkic a qualifying offer.
Mm-hmm.
I think he probably should just take that. I don't know who pays him.
I guess, if you're Portland, why don't you pay him? It's not going to be...
Because you just drafted Zach Collins.
Sure. It's not impossible. I know I wrote something last year, I think, where I thought Collins was kind of their five of the future. But if you're trying to... Portland is just in a situation where I don't know exactly what their direction is. And, I would, if I were them, I'd think Neil O'Shea is in a situation where trading... making a big seismic trade of Lillard or even McCollum might be, a sign of, I don't think he would be the guy who gets to oversee the rebuild beyond that. So even though that might be the smartest thing for the franchise, at this point. But I don't know. If you're Portland, why not pay Nurkic, a little bit more than the mid-level so that nobody else can, you're basically saying, no one else can touch this money and you're not going to get more elsewhere regardless. So, here you go and take it or leave it. And I could totally see him signing the qualifying offer for sure, but I don't know. He doesn't seem like the type of player who would, make the best of that situation. You know what I mean?
So here would be my theory on him. If I was Portland, I would not offer him anything more than a 2+ team option deal. I would probably be willing to pay pretty heavy money. I'd probably be willing to say, hey, we'll give you a 348 deal where your money will not be guaranteed in the third year, but over the first 2 years, you'll essentially be getting the money you got over the course of the life of a mid-level exception contract. But the thing is, though, if you do that, then all of your contracts, other than Lillard and McCollum and Zach Collins, they all line up for the summer of 2020. So Evan Turner, Maurice Harkless, Myers Leonard, those deals are all up that summer. So you could theoretically play with some cap space then.
Yeah, you're going to be a tax team, though, and you're not a contender. You were just swept out of the playoffs, with Nurkic. So that's just the tax is just such a terrible variable for what Portland is trying to do, and it's why I just don't understand why they don't. I understand why they don't blow it up, but I feel like blowing it up is just the path here forward for them. And
craziest thing about Portland in regard to the tax, last year they finished the season, I think it is $735 below the luxury tax threshold.
Yeah, what was the move that they made at the deadline? Who did they trade?
Oh,
I think of the top.
Yeah,
to get under it. Yeah.
But yeah, they finished $735 under the tax.
That's awesome. If they re-sign Nurkic to even just the mid-level, that makes them a tax team. So it's
right,
and that's with only, I think, 6 or 7 guys guaranteed. So yeah, that's they don't want to do that, I would imagine.
Right. So, but my theory is if you're signing him even to a mid-level deal, why not just sign him 2 years and make it so that everyone expires at the same time?
Money,
I guess. I mean, you're setting money on fire, but
sure,
it gives you more flexibility down the road, I guess, if Paul Allen's willing to pay it. I don't know. Dante Exum's the other super interesting guy for me. I would imagine Utah matches just about every reasonable deal for him, right?
Yeah, I mean, one of the more... he's very intriguing. I thought he played pretty admirably in the postseason.
Yep.
Particularly on the defensive end. He's once he's healthy, 100% from the various injuries that he's had. I don't know if that'll ever happen, but if the speed can come back to him, he's one of the quicker players in the entire league. And the possibility of him being a pull-up 3 threat is very interesting. I don't know if that's just a tantalizing mirage, but if it ever happens, that's a pretty good NBA player, and definitely an interesting one.
Yeah.
But I don't see any other teams having any interest in him, and going back to Utah is probably the most likely outcome here. Yeah,
I mean, again, if I was Indiana and I didn't get Marcus Smart, I would probably be willing to overpay for Dante Exum. I would be willing to pay $10 million a year for Dante Exum. I believe in him.
How many years?
4, 3, maybe 3 plus 1. I would be willing to pay pretty substantially based off of what I've seen. He's been very, very good when he's been on the floor.
When he's been on the floor, yeah.
It's a big caveat. Don't get me wrong, but
that's a lot of money. That's a commitment.
This year, I know it was only 14 games in the regular season, but 57% true shooting percentage. Still can't shoot yet, even though he has shown flashes of it in the past. Awesome defender. Super, super quick. He did look to have the quickness back. He's a really good passer. I'm a fan of what I've seen of him on the floor. And then you mentioned the playoffs. He was, like you said, really good in the playoffs, too. This is not a player where you're we don't know if, his game translates in the playoffs. I mean, he played 10 games and was useful for them.
And I don't believe, he probably would not have played, been in their rotation if Ricky Rubio was healthy, which is another interesting thing. I'm not as high on him just because he hasn't been able to stay on the floor, and I hear through the grapevine with him that he doesn't attack his rehab with that much of a sense of urgency, and that kind of has come back to bite him a little bit. But yeah, so I mean, if I'm just looking at it, I think I'm predicting him to go back to the Jazz.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, Utah matches $10 million a year on him. They
over
just,
4 years.
Yeah, they just have the space to do it. And next year, the Alec Burks money goes off, so that just slots right in.
Yeah, maybe, or you might be looking at it as you've seen the disappointment and felt the disappointment up close, and if you're an owner, I don't know if you are pumped about paying this guy $40 million after what he's produced over the past couple of years, especially when you look. I mean, I think he was picked he was either picked one pick before or one pick after Marcus Smart.
Before.
So yes, so if I'm just I know that they're not the same age, but if I was an owner in the ownership group for Utah, I would be looking at Smart and being this dude has done what he's accomplished and made the impact he's had in Boston in the playoffs and games that really matter, compared to a guy who's played 2,500 minutes in his career for us. So it would be tricky.
Yeah. The last guy I want to bring up before I let you go is Jabari Parker. Do we think Jabari just stays?
I'm not a huge Jabari fan.
You hate everyone, Pina.
I don't think he. I don't think he reads the game all that well. He's kind of a trucker, and we'll see if he.
I'm going to imagine that you said trucker there instead of chucker, because it's funnier to me imagining Jabari Parker in a trucker hat, shipping things around the country.
A very comical image indeed. So I don't know. I wouldn't want him on my team. He kind of reminds me of Zach LaVine a little bit, a guy who is not a great defender, does not really pass, loves to see himself shoot when he probably shouldn't. Takes a lot of tough shots unnecessarily, and that's not the type of player you want next to this transcendental talent with Giannis Antetokounmpo. So I don't know. I honestly don't know if I would be. I'd obviously make an offer, and I'd give him his qualifying offer for sure if I was Milwaukee. But if you're Coach Bud, like that, I just don't know how Jabari Parker fits in with Coach Bud.
That's a really good question, actually. I think a lot depends on what you think of him as a three-point shooter. I mean, he has averaged like 37% over the course of the last 2 years, but that's only like 250 attempts or so, if I remember correctly. So, like, if you buy him as a shooter, I think it actually works within Budenholzer's offense really well, because you can put him in a corner, he can attack closeouts, he can go baseline, and be effective that way. But, the defense is a concern, obviously. Playing him in between, like the idea of a playoff lineup of Middleton, Parker, and Giannis, where you could have Middleton and Giannis insulating him and allowing him to provide offense, is very interesting. We also saw some flashes of defensive energy from him in the playoffs. It still wasn't there yet necessarily, but there were times where he played better defensively in the playoffs this year, at least in terms of energy. His awareness isn't great, but I mean, like, I don't know what the max I would pay is, though. Like, I feel like the max I would probably go to is like $465, something like that. Like, I think he could get that kind of offer, don't you?
I do. I don't know who gives it.
Chicago could pretty easily, I think.
Yeah, he's from there and everything, but if I was Chicago, I would be kind of keeping my books as clear as possible. I wouldn't even be that aggressive with keeping Zach LaVine, to be honest.
But, like, the problem with all of this for Chicago is, like, there's no reason they shouldn't be in the Kawhi Leonard sweepstakes right now. Like, they have the assets to be in it. They could have offered the 7 and Lauri Markkanen, and that easily gets them in the conversation. And then they would still have max cap space going forward. Like, are they just even a possibility for big free agents right now, I guess is my question.
Right now, probably not. I think we need to see a year of, how... Chris Dunn in year 2 of Fred Hoiberg's system. I'm actually pretty high on Chris Dunn. I think he's a better shooter than I thought he would be, and he was playing like pretty good basketball on both ends before he slammed his face onto the court trying to complete an alley-oop against the Warriors last year.
Yeah.
So you see him kind of mix with Markkanen, and Carter is someone a lot more about than I do, but anytime anyone is compared to Al Horford, even vaguely, my ears perk up. So
offensively, that comparison exists. Defensively, it does not really track.
So Carter is not a good defender?
He's fine on that end. He has the awareness. He has the rim protection ability, but he doesn't move nearly as well as Al does.
Do you think, I have seen some film of him getting destroyed on the perimeter. Do you think, like, a few years in the league, reshaping his body a little bit could improve that? I would hope so, because if not, drafting a fleet-footed, or I guess whatever, the opposite of a fleet-footed. Yes. Yeah. A cement block-footed big man that's just a very,
tough sell.
If he's that with Markkanen, then that's not your front court of the future, and you've got big problems.
Yeah, that's my big concern. I noted that the night of the draft. The question with him in terms of improving that slow-footedness, as you mentioned, he's already in like really good shape. Like, he is like 7% body fat for a dude that's like 250 pounds already. Like, he's just a big dude.
Well, that's yeah. So I guess we'll see what happens with Chicago over the next few years. I think their core is it's hard to kind of flesh out and see what they're going to be. There's obviously a lot of talent, and they have their own pick again next year, which we'll see. what happens there. I think they'll be pretty bad this season, so they might add another juicy pick there and kind of grow this thing out organically.
Yeah. Pina, tell the people where they can find your work. Tell them what's going on in your life. I want to hear everything about what's going on right now.
Nobody wants to hear everything about my life, but I guess, follow me on Twitter at Michael V. Pina. That's the obligatory plug you got to do at the end of these podcasts. And vicesports.com is where I write, and there will be a whole ton of free agency related words from my fingertips to your eyeballs over the next few weeks.
Go follow Mike's work over at Vice. This has been the Game Theory Podcast. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe on iTunes. We will be back later this week, I think, with some more off-season content, maybe a little bit of a draft wrap-up now that we're a little bit farther away from the event. But until next time, we will talk soon. Bye.